So today I'm going to have a catch up with Julian Pace from Happiness Co. So if you're in Perth, you've definitely seen him around. A little bit of a celebrity and all the events and a little bit of a, keynote speaker everywhere in Australia and worldwide. And so I've been working with him a few years ago and definitely changed my life quite a bit. And I'm looking forward to share with you a little bit of the insights of how to prevent burnout, how to spread a little bit more happiness, and just share a little bit of Julian goodness with you. He's definitely a really great guy to have around. So obviously burnout is a massive topic, and I definitely want to have you around talking about that one. But first of all, maybe introduce yourself a little bit for the one or two people that haven't been in touch with you before in Perth.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Julian, or Jules, my friends call me, and I work in the preemptive, mental health and performance space, which is peak performance and personal performance, which is how you get the most out of yourself and the outcome that you're after. And then on the mental health side of that, anxiety, depression, self-esteem, and how these play a critical role in feeling good. Because when you feel good, you take better action. So over the last 7 years, I've been able to work with about 100,000 people across around 10 countries. And Happiness Go has grown immensely in that time as well, which is now we've got 10 presenters and a great team, running programs and initiatives to help people improve their life. So it's a big passion of mine, mental health and performance. It's something I love to teach. It's something that I personally been able to turn my own life around through my struggles and my hardship by using the techniques, or some of the techniques we're definitely going to share today, which is pretty cool.
Awesome. And we connected actually a few years ago when I was going through quite a little bit of a struggle myself, and I found you. I've always been following you on Instagram and loved all the quotes and everything that you shared. And then I actually was part of your 10-week or 12-week challenge, which definitely changed my life basically. And it was such a big impact for me personally, and very grateful for that, very grateful for your team. And when it comes to happiness, obviously it's such a massive part of it. And burnout is happening all the time in business and for everyone around us. So I would love to go a little bit more into the burnout side of things, because I personally overworked quite a bit the last 2 years and was on the verge of burnout a few times, I think. And I think you've been working with so many people as well that have been in a similar situation. So why are people getting into burnout, and how to basically make sure you're not getting into it? That would be really interesting in your perspective.
It's huge. It's a huge thing. And in the last 10 years or so, we have more people burning out than ever before. So the average person that experienced burnout, so there's a few things that are important to know. Number one, that more people are experiencing burnout, and the age bracket is coming down. So for instance, maybe 10 years ago, you may have experienced burnout in your mid-30s to 40s. But now we've got an increased amount of people feeling it, but we get people in their 20s, in their teens, feeling the challenges of burnout, which is really important to know. So what's causing that? Well, probably a bunch of different things, but the key thing I put it down to is this need to be successful, this need to want a better life, this need to want to have things and have a relationship and have assets and be successful in everything that we do. And because of that, there's an enormous amount of pressure. So pressure causes stress. But the key thing about burnout, and I'm really, really open to any questions that people ask about today and from yourself, but burnout is when you experience stress for long periods of time. So if you wonder how burnout comes along, it's not, you just don't wake up in the morning one day and you're burnt out. Think about compounding effect. 1 week you're stressed, 2 weeks you're stressed, you're stressed for a whole 3 months. And then we start having challenges with burnout. So the key ingredient to burnout is long periods of time being stressed, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And obviously you are very, very stressed, or at least very busy in your life as well with all your businesses and everything that you're doing. So how did you have any burnout previously yourself, and how did you get out of it?
Yeah, so there's two really good things to think about stress. There's good stress and there's bad stress, really simply put. So good stress helps you with performance. So when you're in a healthy balance of stress, it helps you perform. It helps you be productive. But when it becomes a bad level of stress, it's when you don't have breaks and time away from the things that's causing you to feel stressed. So the best example I can give, and I'll ask you a few questions. You last year ran a marathon, or you ran a triathlon, true?
Yeah.
And how hard did you train for that marathon?
Well, daily.
Yeah, daily. You trained every day to be able to complete that marathon. How hard was it running the marathon as a whole?
Well, the day itself was not hard, but like the training up was hard.
So you trained to get yourself ready for the moment, right? And think about, how long did it take you to complete?
6 hours on a day.
6 hours. So after 6 hours, were you pretty tired, exhausted, pretty just absolutely shattered because you've just done a 6 hour race?
Yes.
Yeah. So do you then go back to the start line and then do the race again? So think about doing 6 hours and then finishing and then going back to the start line and doing it all over again.
No, definitely not.
That's the best way to think about stress. When you think about physical activity or training or anything like when you're getting your heart rate up, we always recover. So you get to your peak level of performance and your body's in a natural state of stress. And then you recover, which is you rest, you have a sleep, you have good nutrition, you drink lots of water, you rest, your body might get a massage. But the key is that you recover and then you go again. But with people, when it comes to emotional stress or mental stress, we don't take the time to recover, which is, I'm feeling stressed and I've got to keep working harder. So have you ever experienced anyone, Eva, that's really, really stressed about work and then they keep working hard to try and fix it?
Absolutely. Hello.
Yeah, and that's what happens, right? So we don't allow ourselves to recover. So for everyone listening today, the biggest tip I can give about being able to manage your stress is don't be scared of stress itself, but make sure you implement the recovery plan. So work on a project, recover. Work on an outcome, recover. Work on a relationship challenge and recover. And I'm not just talking about sleep. Sleep's an incredible part of helping with burnout and stress. I'm really talking about self-care. So if you think about some of the things that you may do when you are trying to recover from doing a race, ice, massage, go for a swim, go for a walk the next day, awesome.
Have a burger.
Have a burger, exactly. But what are some examples of what people can do for self-care? Is there anything that you do, Eva, when you think about work that you do for self-care? And think about helping the mind recover. So a triathlon, you think about the body recovering. When you think about work and burnout, what could you do for the mind to help your mind recover?
Go for a walk with my dog. I really like that one.
Absolutely.
Or just catching up with friends and just go through like what actually happened in the business and why it actually stressed me in the first place. That's really good as well.
Huge. So things that allow you, and the technique that we want to think about, and if you've got a pen, please write it down if you're listening in, it's called a positive distraction.
I was waiting for it. Write it down.
Write this down. But the key is what we call positive distraction. And it's a technique that we use with sick kids. And most of the time we use it with terminally sick kids. So a positive distraction. Think about the stress and the anxiety a child would feel knowing that he or she is quite sick. Their parents are stressed. It's an environment that it's not their home. They don't feel comfortable, they don't feel safe in. They're in a hospital. They've got tubes in their nose. They've got tubes in their arms. So kids naturally feel a sense of stress. So what we do is what we call positive distraction. It's taking their mind away and putting it somewhere else that's positive for them. The best way to think about stress and burnout is to take your mind and give it a positive distraction, which is walking your dog, spending time with friends, meditating, going to the beach, reading a nice book, going to the movies, something where you can allow yourself to switch off and implement the positive distraction. So if there's one thing that you take away from this live today, please write the word down, positive distraction. Allow yourself to be distracted in a really positive way.
But what are you doing if, for example, you really enjoy working? You actually get a lot of like joy out of working, and you don't feel like you need to rest because it's like, cool, that stressed me a little bit, but I want to just like work on this other thing because that's really fun, or like fun, but not as stressful. And then like that's basically something that definitely happened to me as well, because I was just so enjoying building and growing and working for clients and getting all the results for them, where I really didn't prioritize myself or prioritize the pause at all.
Yeah, and that's what I hear a lot of people say, but I love what I do. And you know what, loving what you do is not enough. Being passionate about what you do is not enough. So what I want people to think about is what we call sustainable happiness. The sustainable happiness is about, well, how do you sustain it over time, which is what we call peak and personal performance. So I've been fortunate enough to work with the Australian cricket team, the West Coast Eagles, the Perth Wildcats, around what we call personal performance. So for everyone listening right now, peak and personal. Peak performance is results driven. It's getting that result for your client. It's getting that promotion. It's getting that paycheck. It's getting a result that you're after. It might be getting married or having kids or buying a bigger house or getting a nicer car. These are results driven, and they link to what we call peak performance. We're performing at our peak to get that result. But what we know about people is no one on the planet can sustain peak performance without recovering. So you may be able to do it for long periods of time, but you need to recover, which is what we call personal performance. Personal performance is, how do you fill up your bucket? How do you find joy and peace? How do you find harmony? And I call it a rhythm. So if you've got a pen, write it down for me, rhythm. How do you find the rhythm between outcome and performance and fulfillment within yourself? Two great ways to think about it. Peak performance equals achievement. Personal performance equals fulfillment. And you need both. Example, Eva, have you ever met a person before with a lot of money that works really hard for that money but's miserable?
Yeah.
So you may be really good at what you do, but really bad at who you are. I repeat it. You may be really good at what you do, but really bad at who you are. So you work really hard, but your relationships are shit. You work really hard, but you've got no friendship circles. You work really hard, but have you ever spent time with an energy vampire?
Yeah, definitely.
They just suck the life out of you because they're just so negative and grumpy. Because long periods of sustainable performance, you're going to find aspects of burnout. But I guess a great way to think about your question is, where do you think you're at? Because there are different levels of stress. So I'll take you through the different stages of stress, and this is where people struggle because they don't always identify where they are. So the first key indicator of stress is what we call the honeymoon period. That's the first bit of stress. It's when it's new, so you might have a new job, you might have a new client, you might be working on a new project, and you're like working really hard, and then you have a natural hit of adrenaline. So make sure you're writing this down. You get a natural hit of adrenaline that makes you feel good, and you push through. And you're quite productive in the honeymoon period because you're feeling good. But the challenge with the honeymoon period, Eva, is most people think it's going to last. It's like, oh, I'm feeling good right now. I can keep working on this project because I feel great. That is the trick, because we think it will last. And then we have the second layer, which is what we call early onset of stress. This is really important. So you go from the honeymoon period because you've been working really hard, and then you move into the early onsets of stress. The key symptom of this one is forgetting things. Have you ever been working really hard, Eva, and start to forget little things?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, I forgot this. I forgot to do the food shopping. I forgot to put the bins out. I literally once last year forgot to pick my daughter up from daycare, right? So I literally forgot. You start forgetting little things that you wouldn't normally forget. The second thing about that is you muscle through. You're like, oh, it'll be right. I'll push through. And we don't take it seriously. So we don't take the early onset of forgetting things seriously. Oh, we all forget things, and we justify the forgetting thing. Oh, I'm just a bit busy. That's why I forgot. That's early onset of stress. The next level down is what we call chronic stress. Chronic stress, and this is where it starts to get really dangerous. You start to feel exhausted all the time. It doesn't matter how much you love your work. And Eva, have you ever had this experience when you really love your work, but you still wake up in the morning exhausted and you can't get out of bed? Absolutely. Yeah, so it's like you still love what you do and you're still so passionate about it, but you just don't feel great. It's like so much harder to get yourself in flow and get yourself in state than it used to be before. So you start feeling exhausted. Number 2, you start not feeling good. Number 3, you start getting worried. You start worrying about things that you may not worry about. So you start worrying about money, you start worrying about relationships, you start to get in your head. You start to really start thinking, over-analyzing, getting overwhelmed in your head. And the biggest one, you start feeling really emotional and flat, exhausted, tired, worried, angry. You start to experience more disempowering emotions than positive. So this is what we call chronic stress. A lot of people live in chronic stress. And then we have burnout itself. So think about there's 3 stages before you get to burnout. And burnout is where people struggle and people's lives start to fall apart. So the number one thing that you can recognize in burnout is behavioral change. Your behavior starts changing. So maybe, for instance, if I was in a relationship with you, Eva, maybe I'd be worried about it, I'd be upset about it, but I'd still be behaving a certain way. Maybe it's still positive. But then as I get into burnout, I'm not engaging with you, I'm not having conversations with you, I'm getting snappy, I'm getting angry, I'm getting frustrated at you. My actual behavior starts to change in burnout. The big thing. Next one is, you feel powerless. Like, I don't know how to change it, I don't know how to make it better, or you feel empty. Have you ever met someone before who's told you they feel empty or powerless?
Everything that we went through before is it was such an interesting way in summarizing, because so many friends of mine are in business and have their own business, and I've literally seen them, or we've been together from the ladder going down and down and down, and now we're okay, and it's really hard to get out of it, or even identifying where you are in that stage. So it's really amazing that you shared that. Thank you very much.
And if anyone's listening right now, I would just ask yourself where you think you are, and if you are listening, feel free to put a comment up. Where do you think you are right now? So most people, just so you know, live in chronic stress, and then people that are entrepreneurs and business owners and people like you, Eva, and me, start to have a great relationship with burnout. And the biggest problem is with people is they keep justifying why they have to keep working harder. It's hey, I've got to keep working harder because I work harder, maybe that burnout will go away. You get used to it. You get used to it, right? And then the last one, there's one more stage though. There's one more stage to stress. It's called habitual stress. And there is only one symptom here, Eva. It is chronic sadness. It is when it doesn't matter how good the relationship is, how good the project is, how good the beach is with your dog, you cannot find anything other than sadness. You feel sad.
Depression?
Yeah, it's ultimately a form of depression. It's you've been working so hard for so long. Have you ever heard the expression of a midlife crisis?
Yeah.
They completely bottom out, right? It's because they find habitual sadness, which is chronic sadness. I get out of bed, I'm sad. I'm with my friends, I'm sad. I'm laughing, but I still feel sad. It is when all you have is sadness, and it takes a while to get there, but when you get there, it is so very hard to get yourself off the canvas.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. But how do we get out of this shit? That's basically my question.
Great question. And I think that I'm really big on the actions of moving forward. So if you're in burnout now, well, cool. Let's work on getting out of burnout. If you're in the honeymoon period, let's work on making sure that you're working on being sustainably happy. And burnout is one side, but on the other side of burnout, it's feeling good. So it's impossible to feel good for long periods of time when you're in burnout. So think about feeling good all the time and then making good choices, being better in your relationship. So feeling good is the key. When you're in burnout, you might have glimpses of feeling good. Is that making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Just a little bit of an insight from myself as well. Last year, all these amazing successes and publications and everything were supposed to feel amazing, where I did in a short period of time, but next day I had a really hard time getting out of bed at some stage. So it's I definitely can very much resonate to everything that you've been through, that it's supposed to make me feel good, but it really doesn't. So it's really, really interesting.
And that is a great example of achieving something and you think it's going to feel amazing, but you feel sad. You feel lonely, you feel lost. You're why doesn't it feel the way it's meant to feel? Is because quite often, I call them high achievers. High achievers will burn themselves into the ground to get the outcome, and when they get the outcome, they have no energy left to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is, now I've given you some examples of what the layers of stress are, I would ask you to, if you were to draw a scale on your piece of paper, are you crisis, struggling, stressed, or healthy? Like, where do you think you are? So, crisis, struggling, stressed, or healthy. And this is a great way to think about where you are in terms of what type of action you need to take. Because, of course, if you're at crisis, you need to do something immediately. Like, if you're at crisis, you need to do something right now to change it. If you're just feeling a little stressed, well, maybe it's not as important. So asking yourself where you are, asking yourself really hard questions is a good starting point. But you asked me, what could we do to start working towards getting out of burnout into feeling better? The biggest thing is what we call recovery and self-care. So if I were to ask you to give me 10 things that you think would be ideal to that, what do you reckon they could be?
Of self-care and recovery?
Yeah.
Sauna, workout, meditation, catching up with friends, spending time in nature, start a new hobby just for yourself, reading a book, spending time with family, and I don't know.
Great.
That was already pretty good.
That was good. That was amazing. Maybe some breath work in there. So the key to this is, for everyone listening, please make sure you can activate the self-care within 24 hours. That's the key. So it has to be able to be activated within 24 hours. So you think about being sick, think about a remedy, think about a form of healing. You have to be able to execute it within 24 hours. So, example, Eva, I'm so stressed at work, but I'm going to go on a holiday in 3 months. I'm so stressed at work, but it's okay because in 3 weeks I get to go on a holiday. That is not how you manage stress. But how many people wait to go on a holiday to manage how they feel? People wait for the weekends. People, it's Wednesday, I'm so stressed, but the weekend's only 2 days away. That is the worst mindset you can have towards dealing with stress. I'll just wait till the weekend to recover. I'll just wait till my holiday to recover. It needs to be implemented within 24 hours. The other tip is that you need to know that you're administering it for self-care. So you may walk your dog, Eva, because you know you've got to walk your dog, right?
Yeah.
But tonight when you go and walk your dog, you're saying to yourself, I'm administering this behavior because I want it to be self-care. Does that make sense?
Basically just like acknowledging to yourself that you do it for yourself and not for someone else.
Absolutely. And you're also activating the part of your brain which is like, I understand that this is helping me recover. Because you can do a lot of things. Like you might go to the gym every day and you're like, well, I do it anyway. But the difference is what's your intention versus your impact. So please write this down for me, everybody listening. Intention versus impact. The intention is self-care and the impact is recovery. Intention is self-care, the impact is feeling better. The intention is feeling good and the impact is being better with my relationships. Intention is so important because it activates your brain. It knows that, okay, I understand that you want me to recover. I understand it's important to recover. So ultimately it's about retraining your brain to get this right. And you know this, Eva, we have down here at Happiness Co, the Mind Boy Lounge, we have like $1 million facility, $1 million facility based around what we're just talking about. For 7 years, I've worked on stage 10, 20, 30 hours a week on my feet, constantly talking, constantly helping people. And the biggest thing that I have learned that allows me to still love what I do and be good at it, but also feel alive every day is making sure that I have an intention to self-care and the impact is feeling good in my life so I make good choices.
Love that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you do it yourself? What are your regular things that you do for yourself to keep that happiness level up? Yeah,
really basic things. So I think when you think about choices, you either make choices towards the person that you want to be or choices away. And I think the other question before I answer your question is, what's it costing you to be stressed all the time? So like your health, absolutely. What else?
Probably time with the family and actually be present.
Being present.
and actually making like delivering good work, because obviously the level of stress is like causing you some kind of lack of concentration.
Yeah. So I narrow it down to one key area. If you live in stress for too long and don't recover, you start to neglect. So you neglect your health, it starts to fall apart, you get sick, you become unhealthy. You neglect your finances, you become broke. You neglect your relationships, you get broken up with. You neglect your career, you don't have a job that you love. And you neglect yourself for long periods of time, you end up at rock bottom. So I always say, what's it costing you? Well, it may not seem like much now, but if you keep doing it, I promise you, you'll wake up one day in your life and be like, how did I get here? Like, why am I here? Why am I unhappy? Why am I miserable? So always ask yourself the question, what's it costing me? Because I always ask myself that when I'm feeling a little bit stressed. Like, what's it costing me to the people I care about? What's it costing me to my own mental health and sanity? And there's a great saying that says, if it costs you your peace, it's too expensive. Fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
If it costs you internal peace, it's probably too expensive. And my routines are very simple. But firstly, I'll tell you how I do it. I break my day into 4 quarters. So if you are listening and you have a pen, break your day into 4 quarters, from when you wake up in the morning until when you go to bed at night. So I wake up at 5:30 and I go to bed at 10:30. That's my day. And then I divide my day into 4 slots. And the reason why I do this is because if I have a bad morning, I can have a better mid-morning. If I have a bad morning and mid-morning, I can still have a good afternoon. If I have a bad afternoon and a bad mid-morning and a bad morning, guess what? I can still have a good night. And one of the things I always teach people is this: please don't let your bad moments convince you that you have a bad life. Don't let your average moments in your day convince you that you have an average life. We have moments that make us feel stressed. We have moments that make us feel unhappy. And if we can address the moments with self-care, then we can actually overcome them. So when we feel good, we take better action. So a bunch of things that I'll do every quarter without fail. Lots of water. Lots of water. Simple. I always do breath work. So my breath work, my favorite bit of breath work is 4, 7, and 8. So hold for 4, in for 7, out for 8. I'll show you. Ready? Hold for 4. In for 7. Out for 8. I do that about 10 times, and instantly it makes me feel better. Every time I start feeling a little anxious, a little stressed, a little in my head, I just do breath work. Because most people don't understand the power of breath. When we're feeling stressed, it's such an important technique. Positive self-talk. Huge one for me. Quite often when you get stressed, what are some things that you might say to yourself that aren't constructive, Eva?
Sorry?
What are some things that you might say to yourself that aren't constructive when you're stressed?
I'm really not nice to myself on a daily basis usually, so something to work on myself is like, well, you need to get it done by now. Why didn't you do it? Just like, you're lazy, or like things like that. Just like the normal things that you're going to say to yourself.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, why can't I do it? Other people do it. Or why am I not like the other people on social media that are always hustling and always grinding? It's like this mentality of hustle and grind. And I'm grateful enough to have 3 really successful businesses and a beautiful family and a good life. But a good life comes down to balance. And my life is far from perfect. But you know what? I prioritize my musts. Please write this down for me. Shoulds versus musts. Too many people have a shoulds list, Eva, and not enough must lists. Yeah, I should self-care. I should drink more water. I should spend more time with my partner. I should be more present with my friends. I should. A few people have good musts. I must drink more water, so you do. I must be present with my partner, so you are. I must go on date night every week. Regardless of what happens in my life, do you still go on date night every week, or are you too tired? Is it making sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you're like, you justify the busyness and you don't prioritize the things that make you feel good because you're tired, you're lethargic, you just want to rest. So they are some of the ones I do, but I'm massive in journaling. I de-stress. I write my journal every night. I de-stress. I write my gratitudes, like what am I grateful for and why. It gives me a healthy perspective. And 3 things that I do that are probably the most important for me personally. are keeping these three things in check. Number one, hope. Number two, choices. And number three, legacy. All you need in life, doesn't matter how stressed you are, is a drop of hope. A drop of hope in your depths of despair. So what we know around the research of hope, which is what I talked about before, which is positive distraction. When you give yourself a positive distraction, you give yourself hope. Hope stimulates dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin. When you have that, these things make you feel good. Oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. When you start to think about the things that are good in your life, that give you hope, you find it. Number two, choices. You're not what happened to you yesterday. You're who you decide to become now. So a lot of people think they are their past experiences. Well, you're not. You're who you are right this second. So make a choice right now from this moment to be the person that you want to be. It's always about being better tomorrow than you were today. So choices matter. Your identity comes down to the choice that you make in this moment. And the last one is legacy, which is legacy is not what you leave behind. Legacy is what you leave in people. How you make them feel. When people are around you, are they inspired? Do they feel good? Do they feel amazing? Do they feel wonderful? I can promise you this. If you're around a stressed person all the time, how does that make you feel, Eva?
Stressed. You're the average of 5 people you spend the most time with.
True. I try my very best for everyone listening to distance myself from people who are stress heads. Because they extract there's two types of energies. There's energy givers and there's energy takers. People who are always stressed all the time, they may have lots of money, they may be really successful, they might have nice things, but they drain energy out of you because they're so intense all the time. Minimize your time being with people who are so stressed that it makes you feel flat, but also minimize the time that you're also being that person. Fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because sometimes you're the person that's making other people feel stressed because you're being a stress head.
Yeah.
So I would say self-reflection, look at, are you captivating enough hope? Are you making good choices regardless of the ones that you made yesterday? And then are you leaving a inspiring legacy on the people that you come in contact with? Like,
awesome.
I think about the research based around suicide. I think this is the importance of stress. That there's so much research around suicide that a complete stranger opened the door for me and said good morning, and that was the reason why I didn't take my own life. Is that fair?
Yeah.
So a complete stranger, you smiled at me and said good morning, and you gave me a sense of hope. But think about when you're really, 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 really stressed. Sometimes we forget to open the door for someone else, true?
Yeah.
Sometimes, have you ever been so stressed before and forget to say good morning to someone?
Rarely, but yeah, happened.
Happens, right? So I put the importance down to this. Sometimes we forget to do the little things well that make the biggest difference on people's lives and their happiness because we're so stressed. And if we just got out of our own way for a second and opened that door, smiled at that person, was kind even when we weren't feeling great, imagine what kind of world we can create. I always think if you want to create a decent world, you've got to remember to be a decent person.
Yeah, absolutely. And you create such a ripple effect, obviously, with Happiness Co. and everything that you're doing with the like all the events and everything that you're doing. Because like I saw you as well, like on an event years and years ago, where it's like, you created like a ripple effect of like even thinking about more about like happiness and more conscious living and things like that. So thank you very much for that. And even when like going to charity and having that kind of involvement with like people that are not having the best day and just like sharing a smile and just sharing something like that makes a big difference as well, what we can see as well.
And so I appreciate that. And I think we can all agree on this. And if you haven't heard this before, I encourage you to write it down, that life is not about what you get, it's about what you give. You know, quite often when we are struggling and we're stressed, we're thinking about ourselves. But when we are giving and contributing and in service of others, we get a different level of energy. It's like when you go to bed tonight, doesn't matter how busy you were, you know when you go to bed that you made this world a little better. You made this world a little brighter. And I think that the world needs more people to not just think about their own, what they're getting, and more about what I'm giving. And I think the more we do that, it helps with that stress. It helps with that burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. And a quick question of like when people, because I've seen so many people going through like are in the chronic stress or burnout phase. So how are they getting out of it? Is it like just constantly doing like the small things and just making sure they're having that habit, or how they are getting out of it again?
Yep. So first thing is a self-awareness with an audit. So I'll run through 4 key areas of stress that people may be identified to. So if you are listening right now, try and identify, are you doing any of these things? And then I'll give you some more action steps. So there's a lot of them, so I'll read them out. So it's physical, behavioral, emotional, and cognitive. They are the key areas of stress. So physical, if you're feeling these things, you need to do something different. Headaches, stomach pains, muscle tightness, and elevated heart rate. That's the physical part. So if you're feeling really tense, have you felt really tense before, Eva, when you're stressed?
I usually have like issues breathing when I'm really stressed.
Yeah, panic attacks, right? Anxiety. People have panic attacks. Behavioral stress, which is a big one. You're bossy, you become argumentative, you increase alcohol or substance use, you compulsively eat or smoke, or you become compulsive in general. You start shouting, you start crying, you start becoming withdrawn. Are you doing any of these things? That's behavioral. Emotional, anxious, boredom. You're bored all the time. You're on edge. You're always edgy around things, edgy around your friends. You feel powerless. You can't change it. And number 4, cognitive, not thinking clearly, forgetful, indecisive, and the inability to focus. So there's a range, there's a spread there. You may be suffering from one symptom or all them symptoms, but what's key to identify is the audit, which is, am I experiencing any of them things that I just mentioned just here? So we teach this in all our programs, because if you're experiencing them, you've got to change it. So the process of change is making change to build habits. What we know about habits is this: your habits build happiness. Your habits determine your happiness. Most people have poor habits. So if you think about some poor habits that you may know people have, Eva, what do you reckon they are in today's world?
Binge watching Netflix.
Get home from work, you binge watch Netflix, right? You watch Netflix every night of the week. What else?
Getting drunk on the weekend.
Every weekend. It's Friday. Thank F it's Friday. You get smashed. What else?
Gossiping, talking bad about other people, or scrolling on Instagram.
Who's been guilty of just scrolling aimlessly on Instagram and Facebook, right? Your habits determine your happiness. What you think about, you become, and what you focus on expands. It's part of your brain. It's your RAS, your reticular activating system. I repeat it. Your reticular activating system. What you think about, you become, and what you focus on expands in your life. So if you spend all your time looking at what other people are doing on social media, you'll be more consumed about what other people are doing. Eva, you just said complaining. If you spend all your time thinking about complaining and you're complaining, your life will become just a big complaint. But a big thing to remember is this: if you want a meaningful life, you need to have meaningful problems. If you want a petty life, have petty problems. So, but how many people do you know in your life that have petty problems?
A lot.
Exactly. It's like, that's not even a problem. That doesn't even come up on my radar. Like, how are you even thinking about that? So I think about, your problems will never go away. You just get better at dealing with them. But you need to have meaningful problems. So having money problems in your business is a meaningful problem because you want to change the world. Having meaningful problems in your relationships because you want to be together and have a better bond is a meaningful problem. Having, meaningful problems and being a good parent is a meaningful problem. But worried about what people think of you, petty problem. Worried about failing, petty problem. Worried about how many followers you have on social media, petty problem. Is this making sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is what people do though. So my biggest thing in terms of tip is eliminate. Input, output, repetition. This is the formula, what we call the mechanics of changing your life. So input, output, repetition creates a level of conditioning. So if you're listening at home, please thumb down for me. Input, output, repetition equals conditioning. So
what do you mean?
Eva, you inputted running every single day.
Sorry?
You outputted probably junk food and a certain bunch of things. You did it every single day, and then you ran a marathon. Fair?
Sorry, what was the first one? You input what?
So you input running every day?
F45 currently, but yes.
Yeah, but you input some type of physical training.
Yeah.
You output maybe junk food. You do it every day. You become stronger, healthy, and fitter. So the key to everyone listening is input good, healthy habits. Output social media, spending time with negative people. Please understand the importance of spending time with people that are just shit for you in general. Like, if you spend any time with people that make you feel less about yourself, spend less time with them or no time with them. Spend time with people that bring out the best in you and create inspiration and possibility. But the more you do that, it becomes repetition, which becomes a condition. You raise your standards by doing more push-ups, helping more people. And the last thing I'll give you on that is ACT. It's a positive psychology technique that we use. ACT, it's an acronym. Action, conditioning, therapy. So you take action to condition yourself to heal. Really important thing to remember. You take action to condition yourself, your mind, your body, your emotions to heal, which is therapy. A lot of people think therapy is, oh, I'm going to go see my counselor. I'm going to see my psychologist. If you sprained your ankle and I said, well, get some therapy, you would think that you're going to get some ice, you'll strap it. A great way to think about it is what we call physical injury versus emotional injury. Stress creates emotional injuries. So how would you treat an emotional injury? Spend time with good people, healthy food, lots of sleep, lots of reading and meditation and breath work, lots of finding purpose and clarity in your life. So take action to condition yourself to heal is probably the biggest tip I can give people.
Awesome. God, I like my notes are going crazy. That was really, really nice. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything in particular that we haven't covered yet? Because obviously it's such a massive topic.
I just think one of the most important things to, I guess, managing it is getting really authentic with yourself. Are you there?
Sorry.
I got you back.
Yes.
I'm back. I think one of the biggest things I can finish on is getting really honest with yourself about why you believe that you have to work so hard, or why you believe you have to be so stressed. Because I think there's this mentality with people today that the harder I work, the better I am, the means the more successful I'll be. And it comes down to these fears, right? These universal fears. Number one, I'm not going to be good enough. Number two, I won't be loved. And number three, I'm going to be rejected. So I'll work hard, you'll love me. I work hard, I'll be good enough for you. If I work hard, people won't reject me. But one of the things I think
and
people
setting boundaries.
Setting boundaries. One of the things I think so many people forget is, do you actually like yourself, by the way? And it's probably the most important question to ask yourself. Because if you are busy and you have a lot of success and you do not like who you are, what is the point? Like, I always say, would you date you? Like, do you like you? And then would you go on a date with you? And I'm like, I think about myself 7 years ago. I would have been an absolute nightmare to go on a date with. So if you like yourself and you would date yourself, and I'm not talking about vanity, I'm talking about, are you kind? Are you loving? Are you decent? Are you balanced? Do you know how to find the good in life? Do you know how to be present? Like, how annoying is it when someone's not present with you? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
That makes you a good human being. So if you aren't answering these questions well and you're like, yeah, but I've got a lot of money in my bank account, you've got to reassess your values. Oh, but I have lots of clients. You've got to reassess your values. If I've got a great social media following, you've got to reassess your values, because I promise you this, life is not about what you get. Happiness is about what you give. So when you're focusing on giving and being balanced and actually giving more to this world that you're taking, you'll find some pretty awesome fulfillment in it.
Awesome. So how can get people in touch with you, and how can get their more amazingness from you and from Happiness Co and from everything else?
Well, obviously all the normal social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Happiness Co's website. And if anything did resonate with anyone on the call today and they want to look at mapping out their year, dealing with stress, overcoming hurdles and obstacles, depression, anxiety, feel free to reach out to me personally or reach out to the company. Our focus and mission is 10 million lives in 10 years. Like, everything that we do as a brand, as a business, is to try and impact people's lives in a positive way. So it sounds like something you'd like to be involved in. Please reach out to us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jules. And yes, we will share this Instagram live on the profile later in terms of the comments that are coming through. Thank you so much for your time. You are amazing. I can't wait to see you again, catch up again at some stage. And yeah, thank you so much. And I hope you have an amazing day.
Big love, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you very much. Bye.